The rain came in off the ridge like it had somewhere to be, and it hit the longhouse roof of Callow Ford's great hall in a sound like applause nobody asked for. Inside, a wedding had just been cancelled. Outside in the mud sat Marin Duskalow. She was not crying. She had passed that a few minutes ago. Now she was just sitting on the longhouse step in her good dress, the green one she had altered herself 3 times to get the shoulders right, staring at the distance where her idea of the future used to be. The rain didn't bother her. The cold didn't either. What bothered her was that through the closed door she could still hear the party. The wedding feast, still going, apparently, just without the bride. Her prospective family had made their feelings known with impressive efficiency. Too much attention on the family name, the mother-in-law had explained, smoothing her own dress. An orc wife was a choice that had consequences. She'd used the word consequences 4 times in 2 sentences, which Marin thought was thorough of her. Then the door had closed. The latch had dropped. The music had started again. Marin had been sitting in the mud for 11 minutes. A wagon came up the road. It was an ordinary wagon, 1 cask of ale in the back, a mule the color of old iron in the front, and a man on the seat who was not paying close attention to anything except the muddy ruts and the question of whether his left rear wheel was going to hold. He was a tall man, somewhere in his 60s, with the kind of face that had done a lot of weather. He pulled up at the great hall's side door, which was the delivery entrance, and he stopped. He looked at the woman sitting in the mud. He looked at her good green dress soaked through, at the longhouse door, at the sound of a fiddle playing inside. He did not ask what happened. He climbed down from the wagon, went to the side of his bench, and came back with a wooden camp stool. He set it on the driest patch of ground he could find within arm's reach of the step. He sat down on it. He reached back under the bench and produced a cloth-wrapped parcel that turned out to be half a loaf of dark bread and a piece of hard cheese. He broke the bread. He held half out to her. She stared at it. "I'm not hungry," Marin said. "I know," he said, "but it's raining and my name is Kale and this bread isn't getting drier." She took the bread. That was the beginning. His name was Kale Rowe. He ran the Thorngate Inn, 2 miles east of Callow Ford, which he had inherited from his wife's family 7 years ago when his wife died, and it turned out he was the only one left who knew how to run the place. He told her this while they sat in the rain, which was already slowing, the way rain does when it has finally made its point. He didn't ask her name. He didn't ask anything. He talked about his mule, a terrible animal named Persistence who had bitten him every day for 6 years, and showed no signs of changing, and about a pipe in the inn's cellar that had been leaking since April, and about the cask of ale in the back which he had been paid to deliver, but was now running out of reasons to hurry. Marin ate the bread. By the time the rain stopped, she had told him her name. That was all she gave him, and he didn't reach for more. He stood up, folded the camp stool under his arm, and said that the Thorngate had a proper fire and a room that was empty if she had nowhere pressing to be that evening. She had nowhere pressing to be. She stayed that night. She stayed the next day. She told herself she was staying until the mud on her dress dried, and then until the road was passable, and then until she had figured out the next thing. The rooms at the Thorngate were plain and warm, with wool blankets thick enough to actually work, which Marin appreciated. Kale fed her without fanfare porridge in the morning, stew in the evening, cheese and bread at noon, and called her his guest and left her to it. On the second morning, she fixed his cellar pipe. She didn't ask. She had found the tools in the lean-to, identified the problem in 4 minutes, and had the pipe patched and the floor mopped before Kale came down with the breakfast. He looked at the dry floor. He looked at her. He set down the tray and said, "Thank you." "You were going to flood by midwinter," Marin said. "I know," he said. "I've been trying to sort it since April." The joint fitting was wrong. Whoever installed it was guessing. That was me, in fairness. She almost smiled. That afternoon she split 3 weeks' worth of firewood, because the pile was running low and standing still felt worse than moving. Cale watched her from the window for about 30 seconds, which was all the time it took to conclude that she knew what she was doing, and went back to his accounts. By evening, she had the pile stacked neat and covered, and she came inside with wood dust on her sleeves and sat down at the kitchen table like she'd been doing it for years. Cale poured her tea and didn't comment. On the third day, she started helping in the kitchen during the dinner service. She had no formal plan to do this. The Thorngate had 3 tables of travelers that evening, and Cale was short-handed because his usual help, a boy from the village named Pell, had a fever. Marin watched him make 3 trips across the room in the time it should have taken 1, and then she stood up and started carrying plates. She knew how to read a room. She knew how to carry 5 things at once without dropping them. She knew how to catch a man's eye from across a room and tell him his order was coming without saying a word. The travelers tipped well. Cale counted the coins after the last guest had gone up and looked at her across the kitchen. "You've done this before," he said. "My mother ran a waypost kitchen for 20 years, Marin said. "I grew up in it." He nodded slowly. "Marin," he said, "you're welcome to stay as long as you need. I'm not asking for anything in return. That's not what this is." "I know," she said. She did know. That was the strangest part. She had known it since the camp stool in the mud, which was not a gesture a man made if he wanted something back. She was not used to knowing that. She had spent a long time not knowing that. "The room is yours," he said. "That's all." She looked at him for a moment. Outside the window, the last of the autumn light was going gold at the ridge line. "The drainage ditch on the south side of the yard is blocked," she said. "I'll clear it in the morning." Cale nodded. "I'd appreciate it." The clan elder arrived on the 6th day. His name was Duroc, and he was a broad, gray-haired orc of about 70 who wore his authority the way other men wore their good coat, every day, without thinking about it. He came with 2 younger clansmen at his back and a look of settled impatience on his face. The look of a man who had already decided how this conversation was going to end. He found Marin behind the bar, restocking the ale shelf. He found Cale in the kitchen doorway, watching. "Marin," Duroc said, "the family has made an offer to reconsider the match, given time and the right presentation. It's time to come home." Marin looked at him. She did not look at him the way she'd looked at the longhouse door from the mud. She looked at him steadily, with her hands still on the ale shelf, like a woman who had recently stopped being in a hurry. "Tell them no," she said. Duroc's expression shifted, the family standing. "Tell them no." He looked past her at Cale, as if Cale might explain the problem. Cale had nothing to add. He went back into the kitchen and left the bar to Marin. Duroc tried for another few minutes. He pointed out the advantages of the family alliance, the social weight of the match, the difficulty of finding another arrangement of that quality. Marin listened to all of it behind the bar of the Thorngate Inn on a Thursday morning in the first week of October, and when he was done, she said that she had been at the Thorngate for 6 days and had fixed the cellar pipe, stacked 3 weeks of firewood, cleared the south drainage ditch, helped with 4 dinner services, rebuilt the latch on the stable door, and identified a dry rot problem in the east gable that was going to cost twice as much if it wasn't addressed before first snow. She said she had not spent 1 minute of those 6 days wishing she was somewhere else. She said she was staying. Duroc left. The first snow came early that year, the 2nd week of October, and by then Marin had repaired the east gable. Cale had bought the timber. She had found a carpenter in the village willing to let her work alongside him for half the fee. She already knew the joinery. She just needed the reach of a second pair of hands, and the gable was tight and solid and right before the first flakes fell. She stood in the yard with sawdust on her coat and looked up at it and felt something she hadn't felt in a long while. Cale came out with 2 cups of tea. "It's good work," he said, looking up with her. "It'll hold 20 years, Marin said. He handed her the tea. Their hands were close on the cups. Neither of them moved away. "I want to talk to you about something," Cale said. "Not the gable." She looked at him. He told her that the Thorngate had always been a decent stopping place, but it had never quite been what he thought it could be. He'd been running it alone, and running it alone meant running it just well enough to keep going, which was not the same as building something. He said that in 6 days she had fixed more problems than he'd addressed in 6 months, and the dinner service on Tuesday had taken in more than any single evening since the spring fair. He said he didn't know what she wanted, and he wasn't going to assume. But if she was interested, he thought they could make the Thorngate into the finest stopping place on the Eastern Road. A proper kitchen, a stable with real capacity, the kind of place that traders actually planned their route around. He stopped, looked at her sideways. "I'm asking you to stay," he said, "properly, as a partner, not as a guest." The Eastern Road ran from the Orc clan territories all the way down to the frontier towns, and there was no good stopping place in the middle stretch. Marin had known this since she was 12 years old, riding the road with her mother between the waypost kitchens. She had always known there should be something at Callow Ford's edge. She had never thought she would be the one to build it. She said yes before the tea went cold. By spring, the Thorngate had a new stable, a kitchen with a second hearth, and a reputation that had started moving down the road ahead of them. By summer, 3 trading families from the Orc Eastern clans had made it their official midpoint stop on the Eastern Run. By autumn, a waiting list had started for the rooms. Cale ordered 2 new beds. Marin started teaching Pell, recovered from his fever, eager and faster in the kitchen than he looked, how to manage a dinner service without losing his head. The clan elder Duroc came back in September. He came without his 2 men this time, and without his authority code expression. He came in the early evening, sat at the bar and ordered ale. He looked around the room, the full tables, the fire, the sound of a kitchen that knew what it was doing, and he drank half his cup before he said anything. "The family that canceled the match," he said, "has fallen into difficulty." Marin wiped the bar. "I heard. There is a thought among the elders, among some of us, that we owe you something, an acknowledgement, a different kind of proposal, perhaps." Marin looked at him. "Duroc," she said quietly, "I don't need the elders' proposal. I have the one I want." He looked past her at the kitchen door, where Cale had just appeared with a platter. He looked at the 2 of them. The way she and Cale moved around each other in the room without collision, without effort, without even appearing to coordinate, the way people do when they have learned each other's rhythms without meaning to. He nodded slowly. "Then I'll just have the ale," he said. Marin refilled his cup. The wedding was in the Callow Ford longhouse, the last week of October, 1 year after the rain. Marin wore the green dress, altered a 4th time, and this time the shoulders were exactly right. Cale wore a coat that Pell had pressed 3 times because he kept sitting in it. The clan elder Duroc was there, and he stood when they were called forward, which no one had asked him to do, and no one told him to stop. Outside the longhouse, in the place where the mud had been, a plank walkway now ran from the road to the step. Marin had laid it herself in March, because she had walked out of this building once in wet shoes, and saw no reason anyone else should have to. The longhouse was warm. The fiddle played. This time, Marin was still there when it ended.